The morning sky over Kelmar 7 burned red with fire that should not have been there. Veskala stood on the observation platform of the central hive, her forearms trembling as she watched the orbital defense stations explode one by one. Each burst of light meant hundreds of her people were dead. The Zanari had lived in peace for 3 generations. They had forgotten what war looked like. Now they were learning fast. "Elder, we must evacuate the surface." Her assistant, young Kretok, pulled at her arm. His wings buzzed with panic. Veskala wanted to tell him everything would be fine. She wanted to say that help was coming, but she had lived too long to believe in comfortable lies. The Krell warships filled the sky like a swarm of metal locusts. Their dark hulls blocked out the sun. "Sound the emergency protocols," she said quietly. "Get everyone into the underground shelters. We have maybe an hour before they start bombing the cities." Kretok's antennae drooped. He knew what that meant. The shelters could hold perhaps half the population. The rest would have to take their chances on the surface. It was not a choice anyone should have to make. Across the city, sirens began to wail. Veskala watched millions of her people flood into the streets carrying children and whatever possessions they could grab. The Zanari were not warriors. They were farmers and artists, traders and teachers. They built things. They did not destroy them. The Krell did both very well. A massive explosion shook the platform. Veskala grabbed the railing as debris rained from the sky. One of the Krell destroyers had fired on the spaceport. She could see the flames rising from where the launch pads used to be. No one would be escaping into space now. "Elder," Kretok pointed upward. "Look." A small ship was breaking through the atmosphere, engines screaming. It was running. Even from this distance, Veskala could see the hull was damaged, trailing smoke and sparks. It was a human vessel, one of their cargo freighters. She recognized the markings. The ship belonged to Marcus Chen, a trader who had been coming to Kelmar 7 for years. A friend. The freighter was fast, but the Krell fighters were faster. 3 of them peeled away from the main fleet and gave chase. Their weapons lit up the sky. The freighter dodged and weaved, but it was not built for combat. One shot clipped its engines. Then another. The small ship began to fall. "No," Veskala whispered. She knew Marcus had a wife back on Earth, 2 daughters. But before the freighter crashed, something strange happened. A bright pulse of light burst from its communication array, an FTL beacon. Marcus was sending a distress call. He was telling someone what was happening here. Then the Krell fighters fired again, and the freighter disappeared behind the city skyline in a ball of fire. Veskala felt something break inside her chest. Marcus Chen had died trying to call for help. But help was weeks away, maybe months. The human fleet was scattered across 1,000 systems. Even if they got the message, even if they sent ships immediately, it would take time. Time the Zanari did not have. "All defense platforms are gone," Kretok reported, reading from his datapad. His hand shook. "All ships in orbit have been destroyed. Ground defenses are down to 20%. "Elder, we have nothing left to fight with." Veskala looked at the young aide. He was barely into his second molt, still learning how to be an adult. He should have been studying at the university, chasing mates, building a life, not counting the minutes until death arrived from above. "Then we will hide," she said firmly, "and we will survive. Come, we must get to the shelters." They made their way down through the central hive's winding corridors. Everywhere, people rushed past carrying bags and boxes. Some were crying. Others were silent, their faces blank with shock. Veskala stopped to help an elderly male who had fallen. She guided children separated from their parents toward the evacuation teams. She did what she could. It was not enough. It would never be enough. The underground shelter was massive, carved from solid rock centuries ago. The Zanari ancestors had built it as a refuge from storms, not invasions. Now it would have to serve both purposes. Veskala watched the huge blast doors swing shut with a sound like thunder. Outside, the world was ending. Inside, they had 3 days of life support. Maybe 4 if they rationed carefully, and then what? The Krell would not leave. They never did. They took what they wanted and crushed anyone who resisted. The Zanari had valuable minerals in their planet's crust. They had water. They had good farmland. The Krell wanted all of it, and they did not like to share. Hours passed in the dark. The shelter's lights were dimmed to save power. People huddled together in family groups, speaking in whispers. Some prayed to the old gods. Others simply waited. Then the ground began to shake. "Orbital bombardment," someone said. They are hitting the surface. Veskala closed her eyes. She thought of the gardens above them, the libraries, the schools, the market where she had bought fresh grain just yesterday morning. All of it was burning now. A soldier approached, her armor scorched and dented. Elder, we are picking up a transmission. Krell Command is broadcasting on all frequencies. Put it through, Veskala said. The voice that filled the shelter was cold and harsh. It spoke in broken Zanari, each word clipped and sharp. Insects of Kelmar 7, you have 24 hours to surrender. Open your shelters. Submit to Krell authority. If you refuse, we will crack this planet open and dig you out. You cannot win. You cannot escape. Choose wisely. The transmission ended. Silence fell over the shelter like a heavy blanket. What do we do? Kretok asked quietly. Vesikala looked around at her people. Thousands of faces stared back at her, waiting for an answer she did not have. The Krell were right. The Zanari could not win. They had no weapons that could hurt the fleet above them. They had no allies close enough to help. They had nothing but hope, and hope was not enough to stop bombs. But she was an elder. Her people needed strength now, not despair. We do what we have always done, she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. We survive. We protect each other. We do not give up. The humans will come. I know they will. We just have to hold on until they arrive. She wished she believed her own words. Deep in the wreckage of the spaceport, buried under twisted metal and burning debris, Marcus Chen lay trapped in what remained of his ship's cockpit. Blood ran down his face. His legs were crushed. Pain filled every breath. But his hand still worked, and that was enough. He reached for the emergency transmitter, the one that ran on backup power, the one that broadcast on old human military frequencies, the ones that stayed active even when everything else failed. His fingers found the switch. This is Freighter Blue Horizon, he gasped into the microphone. Kelmar 7 under attack. Krell Invasion. Need immediate assistance. Civilian casualties in the millions. Please, someone, help them. He set the message to repeat and slumped back in his seat. Outside, he could hear the Krell soldiers moving through the ruins. They would find him soon. But it did not matter anymore. He had done what he could. Marcus Chen closed his eyes and thought of his daughters. He hoped they would understand why he had stayed. Why he had not run when he had the chance. Some things were worth dying for. Above the planet, the Krell fleet settled into orbit like a noose tightening around a neck. Below ground, the Zanari waited in the dark, and somewhere in the vast emptiness between stars, a signal traveled at the speed of light, carrying a simple message into the void. Please help. We are dying here, please, nobody answered. 48 hours had passed since the Krell arrived, and Kelmar 7 was dying slowly. Veskala walked through the shelter's medical section, stepping carefully around families sleeping on the floor. There was not enough space. There had never been enough space. The air was growing stale despite the ventilation systems running at full power. People breathed the same breath over and over, and each cycle made it a little harder to fill their lungs. Elder, you should rest, Kretok said. He looked worse than she did, his eyes sunken and dull. Nobody had slept properly since the invasion began. I will rest when this is over, Vesikala replied. She knew it was a lie. When this was over, she would likely be dead. They all would. A young doctor waved her over. Elder, you need to see this. We found someone. Veskala followed him to the far corner of the medical bay. A human lay on one of the cots, his body broken and burned. She recognized him immediately. Marcus Chen, the traitor who had tried to call for help. The one she had watched die when his ship crashed. He is alive? She asked, astonished. Barely, the doctor said. A salvage team found him in the wreckage this morning. They brought him through the maintenance tunnels. Elder, his injuries are severe. Both legs are crushed. Internal bleeding. I have done what I can, but our medical technology is not designed for human biology. Vesikala moved closer. Marcus's eyes were closed, his breathing shallow and ragged. But he was alive. Against all odds, he had survived. Can you wake him? She asked. The doctor hesitated. It would be painful for him. I know. But I must speak with him, please. The doctor administered a stimulant. Marcus's eyes fluttered open. For a moment he looked confused, unable to remember where he was. Then recognition dawned. Vesikala, he whispered. His voice was rough, damaged by smoke. The fleet. Did my message get through? Veskala took his hand gently in hers. Human hands were so strange with only 5 fingers. So fragile. Yes, Marcus. Your beacon is still broadcasting. You were very brave. He tried to laugh, but it came out as a cough. Blood flecked his lips. Not brave, stupid. Should have run when I had the chance. You stayed to warn us. To call for help. Fat lot of good that did. Marcus closed his eyes again. The nearest human fleet is 6 weeks away. Maybe more. I checked before the crash. You do not have 6 weeks, do you? Veskala did not answer. They both knew the truth. There was a ship, Marcus said suddenly. His eyes opened again, brighter now. Urgent. The Retribution. Heavy cruiser. Old one, from the Resource Wars. She was in this sector 3 months ago on patrol. I saw her docked at Station Kepler for repairs. Where is she now? Veskala asked, though she already suspected the answer. Being decommissioned, sent back to Earth for scrapping. But Elder, listen. The Retribution was built for one thing. Killing enemy fleets. If she got the message, if the crew heard... He trailed off, coughing again. If they heard, they are still weeks away. Veskala said gently, and one ship cannot stop a fleet. You do not know human warships, Marcus said. His grip on her hand tightened. You do not know what they can do when they are angry. The Retribution earned her name in the war. She fought in the Battle of Proxima, took on 5 enemy capital ships and killed them all. The Krell think they are predators. They have never met a real predator. Veskala wanted to believe him. She wanted to think that somewhere in the darkness help was coming. But hope was a dangerous thing. It made the fall so much harder when it finally died. Rest now, she told Marcus. Save your strength. He shook his head weakly. No, the emergency transmitter. In my ship, still broadcasting. Military frequencies. Old codes. If anyone is listening, they will hear it. They will come, Marcus, they will come, he insisted. Then his eyes closed again and he slipped back into unconsciousness. Veskala stood and walked away, leaving the human to whatever dreams still found him in the dark. Above ground, the Krell were methodical in their destruction. They did not rush. They did not need to. The Zanari had no weapons that could hurt them, no ships that could escape. The invaders took their time, cataloging resources, marking mineral deposits, identifying which structures to keep and which to demolish, and they waited for the surrender that they knew must come. In the shelter, time crawled. People tried to maintain routines, tried to pretend that everything was normal. But everyone knew it was a lie. The children were too quiet. The adults spoke in hushed voices, and every few hours the ground would shake as another Krell bomb fell somewhere above them. On the second night, young warriors came to Veskala with a proposal. Elder, we wish to fight, said Threnak, a male barely into his 3rd molt. We have gathered weapons. 50 of us. We can strike at their landing forces, make them pay for our world. Veskala looked at the young faces around her. They were terrified, but they were angry too. They wanted to do something. Anything rather than hide and wait for death. You will die, she said simply. We know, Threnak replied, but better to die fighting than to die on our knees. Maybe we kill a few of them. Maybe we slow them down. Every hour we delay is another hour for help to arrive. Veskala thought of Marcus Chen, bleeding and broken but still believing rescue would come. She thought of the old stories, tales of Zanari warriors from before the long peace. Perhaps these young ones were right. Perhaps it was time to remember how to fight. Go then, she said quietly. Make the Krell remember our name. They left in the darkest hours, 50 warriors with weapons meant for hunting, not war. They moved through the maintenance tunnels and emerged into the ruins of the capital city. The Krell had set up a command post in what used to be the government center. It was heavily guarded, but not as much as it should have been. The Krell were arrogant. They did not think the Zanari could threaten them. The attack lasted 7 minutes. The warriors struck fast, using surprise and desperation as their weapons. They killed 3 Krell soldiers and damaged 2 armored vehicles before the enemy responded. Then the Krell heavy weapons opened up and the young warriors died as they had known they would. Threnak was the last to fall, his body torn apart by plasma fire as he screamed defiance at his killers. But 7 minutes was enough to make the Krell angry. They increased the bombardment. They sent soldiers into the tunnels, searching for the shelters. They broadcast new demands promising terrible consequences if the Zanari did not surrender immediately. In the shelter, Vesikala held her grandchildren close and tried not to think about how little time they had left. The life support was failing. The air was thick and hard to breathe. People were getting sick, and now the Krell were coming underground, hunting them through the tunnels. Marcus Chen woke one more time, summoned by pain and the knowledge that the end was near. He pulled himself to the communication console, leaving a trail of blood across the floor. His hands shook as he adjusted the emergency transmitter. "This is Marcus Chen," he said into the void. "Kelmar 7 Krell invasion. 2 days since initial attack. Civilian population in underground shelters. Life support failing. Krell forces breaching perimeter. If anyone can hear this, please help them. The Xenari are good people. They deserve better than this. Please." He set the message to repeat on every frequency he could find, including the old military channels that nobody used anymore. Channels from a war that ended 20 years ago. Channels that should have been silent. But somewhere in the dark, something heard. The shelter's sensors detected movement in the outer tunnels. Krell soldiers getting closer. Vesikala could hear the explosions as they blasted through the sealed doors. They would be here soon. Minutes, maybe. Not longer. She gathered her people in the central chamber and tried to think of something to say. Some final words that would give comfort. But what comfort was there? They had fought. They had endured. And they had lost. "I am sorry," she said finally. "I am sorry I could not save you." The explosions grew louder, closer, the blast doors shook. Children cried. Adults held each other. Then every alarm in the shelter started screaming at once. "What is happening?" Kritok shouted over the noise. A technician stared at his console in disbelief. "Elder, something just entered the system. Massive FTL signature. It is huge." "The Krell reinforcements?" Veskala asked, her heart sinking. "No. The signature is wrong. It is, Elder, it is broadcasting human identification codes." "Military codes," Veskala's breath caught. She looked at Marcus Chen, still slumped over the transmitter, blood pooling beneath him. The human had said someone would come. She had not believed him. Outside the shelter, in the space above Kelmar 7, reality tore itself apart as something enormous dropped out of hyperspace with weapons already charging. And on every frequency, a voice spoke with cold fury. "Kelmar 7, this is the human navy. We heard you." "Hold on." Commander Sarah Okonkwo stood on the bridge of the HSS Retribution and watched the Krell fleet scramble in panic. It was almost beautiful in a terrible way, watching predators realize they had become prey. "All stations report ready, Commander," said Lieutenant Hayes from Tactical. "But we are still running at 60% capacity. The hyperspace jump damaged the port reactor. Engineering says they need at least an hour to stabilize it." "They have 10 minutes, Sarah said flatly. "After that, we will need every weapon we have." She studied the tactical display. 37 Krell warships, 3 carriers, 12 destroyers, 22 frigates and support craft. Against her 1 heavy cruiser, battered and old and held together by spite and determination. The math was simple. The Retribution should not even be here, should have been melted down for scrap metal 2 weeks ago. But Sarah Okonkwo had never been good at following orders she thought were wrong. "Open all channels," she commanded. "Let me speak to them." Hayes worked his console. "Channels open, Commander." "They can hear you." Sarah straightened her uniform and spoke with the authority of the entire human fleet, even though she commanded only 1 ship with a skeleton crew of 47 souls. Krell forces in the Kelmar 7 system. "This is Commander Sarah Okonkwo of the human Navy ship Retribution. You have illegally invaded a sovereign world under human protection. You have murdered civilians. You have committed acts of war. I am giving you 1 chance to withdraw. You have 3 minutes to begin breaking orbit. If you are still here when the time expires, we will consider your intentions hostile and respond accordingly." Silence answered her for several seconds. Then the Krell fleet commander's face appeared on the view screen. He was massive, nearly 3 meters tall, with scales the color of rust and eyes like yellow coins. When he spoke, his voice was full of contempt. "1 human ship," he said. 1 ancient warship barely functional. Against my entire fleet. Your bravery is admirable. Your stupidity is extraordinary. I am Admiral Kreshitar of the Krell Dominion. I have conquered 17 worlds. I have destroyed fleets 10 times larger than my own. What makes you think your single ship can threaten me?" Sarah smiled, and there was no warmth in it. "Admiral, have you heard of the Battle of Proxima?" The Krell Admiral's eyes narrowed. "Ancient history. A human victory against inferior opponents. This ship fought in that battle, Admiral. This ship killed 5 enemy capital ships in 4 hours. The weapons that won that battle are still operational. The crew that fires them still remembers how. And, Admiral, we are very angry. You have 2 minutes and 30 seconds, she cut the transmission. Commander, they are not withdrawing, Hayes reported. Their fleet is taking an attack formation. They are surrounding us. Of course they are, Sarah said. She had not expected them to run. The Krell were proud. They would rather die than retreat from a single enemy ship. It was going to cost them everything. Helm, take us into the planet's magnetic field. Use it to disrupt their targeting. Tactical. I want firing solutions on their command ships. Target their communications arrays first. If we can blind them, they cannot coordinate. The Retribution dove toward the planet, her old engines roaring with more power than they were designed to handle. Alarms screamed throughout the ship. In engineering, Chief Petty Officer Maria Ramos shouted orders at her team, keeping the reactors from overloading through sheer force of will. The Krell fleet opened fire. Space lit up with plasma bolts and missile trails. The Retribution's shields flared as dozens of impacts struck home. But the old warship had been built to take punishment. Her armor was twice as thick as modern ships. Her shields were outdated but powerful. She took the hits and kept moving. Return fire, Sarah ordered. The Retribution's main railgun spoke. 2 massive projectiles, each the size of a small vehicle, accelerated to a fraction of light speed. They crossed the distance to the nearest Krell destroyer in less than a second. The first shot punched through the destroyer's shields like they were paper. The second shot went through the hull, through the reactor, and out the other side. The Krell destroyer simply came apart, torn in half by the impact. Target destroyed, Hayes reported, his voice tight with controlled excitement. Krell fleet is breaking formation. They did not expect us to hit that hard. They should have done their research, Sarah said. Next target. Lead carrier. Hit them where it hurts. The battle became a deadly dance. The Retribution was outnumbered but not outgunned. Every shot from her main weapons could kill a ship if it landed. But she could not afford to trade shots with an entire fleet. So Sarah used every trick she knew. She hid behind the planet's moon, using it as cover. She flew through debris fields, making the Krell weapons hit their own destroyed ships. She used the magnetic field to scatter their targeting sensors, and she kept firing. Another destroyer died, then a frigate, then another. The Krell were getting frustrated. They tried to surround her, to trap her with sheer numbers, but the Retribution was faster than she looked. Old, yes, but built by engineers who understood that speed could be its own kind of armor. Commander, we have a problem, said Ensign Park from sensors. 6 Krell heavy cruisers are moving to intercept. They are setting up a kill box. If we fly into that, they will hit us from all sides. Sarah studied the tactical display. Park was right. The Krell Admiral had finally figured out a strategy. 6 heavy cruisers in a perfect formation, their weapons overlapping. If the Retribution entered that zone, she would be hit by dozens of guns at once. Not even her thick armor could survive that, but there was another way. How many FTL jumps can we make? Sarah asked. Chief Engineer Ramos's voice came over the intercom. Commander, we are barely holding together as it is. An FTL jump inside a system is dangerous. The gravitational interference, the risk of collision. How many? Sarah repeated. Ramos swore in Spanish, then English, then Spanish again. 1, Commander, maybe. If the ship does not tear itself apart, and we will be dead in space afterward. No shields, no weapons. Just sitting there waiting to die. 1 is all I need, Sarah said. Helm, prepare for emergency FTL jump. Plot coordinates to put us directly behind the Krell flagship. Point-blank range. The bridge went silent. Everyone understood what she was planning. It was insane. It violated every rule of space combat. Ships did not jump to FTL inside a system. The math was too complicated. The risks too high. 1 miscalculation and they would appear inside a planet, or scattered across several light years, or simply cease to exist. Commander, Hayes said carefully, if we do this, we only get 1 shot, and then we are defenseless. Then we better make it count, Sarah replied. All power to weapons. I want every gun loaded, every missile ready, everything we have. When we appear, we fire everything at once. Understood? Understood, Hayes said. He began working his console, programming the attack sequence. The Retribution accelerated toward the Krell kill box. The 6 heavy cruisers waited, their weapons charged and ready. They thought they had won. They thought the human ship was flying to its death. They were right, just not in the way they expected. FTL jump in 5 seconds, the helm officer announced. 4, 3, 2, 1, jump. Reality bent. Space folded. The Retribution vanished from normal space for exactly 0.3 seconds, traveled 40,000 kilometers, and reappeared directly behind the Krell flagship at a distance of less than 500 meters. For a moment, both ships simply existed in the same space, facing each other like ancient warriors meeting on a battlefield. Then the Retribution unleashed hell. Railguns fired. Missiles launched. Plasma cannons discharged. Nuclear torpedoes activated. Every weapon on the old warship fired at the same instant, all of them aimed at the Krell flagship's engines and reactor. The distance was so close that the Krell shields never had time to fully activate. The impacts hit bare hull. The flagship's reactor core went critical. The explosion was bright enough to see from the planet's surface. When the light faded, the Krell flagship was gone. Just debris and radiation where a capital ship had been, and the Retribution hung dead in space, all power offline, shields down, weapons empty. Damage report, Sarah said into the sudden silence. Everything, Ramos replied tiredly. Commander, we are damaged everything. The jump fried half our systems. The weapons overload burned out the capacitors. We have emergency power only. No shields. No weapons. Life support is running on backup. We are a sitting target. Sarah looked at the tactical display. The remaining Krell fleet was in chaos. Their flagship was destroyed. Their admiral was dead. But they still had 30 ships left, more than enough to kill one crippled cruiser. Then we wait, Sarah said, and we see what they do next. The Krell fleet began to regroup. Slowly, cautiously, they formed up again. A new admiral took command, broadcasting on all frequencies. His voice shook with rage. Human ship, you have killed Admiral Kreshitar. You have destroyed 12 of our vessels. But you are finished. Surrender now and we will allow your crew to live. Refuse and we will tear your ship apart piece by piece. Sarah opened a channel. She was so tired. Every part of her body hurt. But she kept her voice steady. This is Commander Okonkwo. My answer is no. Come and get us. The Krell fleet began to advance. Weapons charging. Moving in for the kill. Then Ensign Park gasped. Commander, contacts. Multiple FTL signatures. The Krell did not retreat far. They pulled back to the edge of the system, regrouped and waited. Sarah knew what they were doing. They were calling for reinforcements. They were planning. And they were angry. Commander, we have company, Lieutenant Hayes announced. 3 more Krell battle groups just entered the system. Looks like they called in every ship within a week's travel. Sarah studied the tactical display. 57 Krell warships now, against her 1 crippled cruiser and a fleet of unarmed civilian ships. The math was even worse than before. How long until we can fight again? She asked. Chief Ramos's voice crackled over the intercom. 2 days minimum. Maybe 3. Commander. This ship was held together with hope and good intentions before the battle. Now we are held together with tape and prayers. We need proper repair facilities. We need parts we do not have. We need time. We have 12 hours, Sarah said. After that, the Krell will attack. Make it work, Chief. Commander, even if we repair the weapons, we cannot fight that many ships, Hayes said quietly. Not alone. We are not alone, Sarah replied, looking at the Zanari civilian fleet surrounding them. Hundreds of ships, their crews refusing to leave even though staying meant dying. It made her chest tight with something between pride and grief. On Kelmar 7's surface, the Zanari were digging out. The Krell ground forces had retreated when their fleet pulled back, leaving behind destroyed cities and grieving survivors. In the underground shelter, Vesikala organized rescue teams, searching the rubble for anyone still alive. They found Marcus Chen in what was left of his ship, still alive, still broadcasting his distress signal even though help had arrived. You were right, Vesikala told him as they carried him to medical care. They came, 1 ship. Just like you said. Marcus tried to laugh, but it came out as a cough. 1 ship. Against an army. Stupid humans. Magnificent but stupid. Rest now, Vesikala said, but Marcus shook his head. No, I need a communication system, now. The Retribution's crew needs tactical data. I saw the Krell formations before my ship went down. I know their weak points. So they brought him equipment and Marcus Chen, broken and dying, began broadcasting tactical information to the human warship. Positions of Krell command vessels, weaknesses in their formations, attack patterns they favored, every scrap of intelligence that might help. On the Retribution, Sarah listened to Marcus's transmissions and added them to her battle plans. She knew they could not win, but maybe they could make the Krell pay such a high price that they would think twice before invading another peaceful world. The Zanari fighters, who had survived the underground battles, came to Vesicala with a proposal. They wanted to attack the Krell ground forces that remained, keep them distracted, prevent them from supporting the orbital assault. Vesicala wanted to say no. She had lost so many already, but she knew they were right. Go, she said, but come back alive. I am tired of funerals. The fighters moved out, hitting Krell supply lines, sabotaging equipment, leading the enemy soldiers on chases through the ruins. They were not trying to win, just to annoy, to distract, to buy time for the ship in orbit. Hours passed. The Retribution's crew worked frantically to repair systems. They welded hull breaches. They rerouted power conduits. They performed miracles with broken equipment and impossible deadlines. Chief Ramos ran through the ship like a demon, threatening and encouraging and somehow keeping everything from falling apart completely. Then the Krell sent a final message. Their new admiral appeared on screen, his scales marked with battle scars and his eyes cold with fury. Human commander, you have 12 hours to surrender. After that, we will destroy every ship in this system. The Zanari civilians protecting you will die. Your crew will die. You will die. All because you refuse to accept the inevitable. Sarah looked at him steadily. We already died, Admiral. The moment we decided to come here instead of following orders to the scrapyard. We are already ghosts. You are just finding out what ghosts can do when they are angry. She cut the transmission. Commander, that was perhaps not diplomatic, Hayes observed. I am tired of diplomacy, Lieutenant. Time to remind the galaxy why humans are dangerous. The 12 hours passed too quickly. Chief Ramos reported they had restored 40% of the weapons systems. 40%, against 57 warships. It will have to be enough, Sarah said. All hands, battle stations. Zanari civilian fleet, pull back. This is going to get ugly. But the Zanari ships did not move. Vesicala's voice came over the communication channel. Commander Okonkwo, we are staying. You came alone to save us. We will not leave you to face this alone. You will die, Sarah said flatly. Your ships have no weapons, no armor. You will be destroyed in the first exchange. Then we will die standing beside friends, Vesicala replied. This is not negotiable. Sarah wanted to argue, but she understood. The Zanari had spent 2 days thinking they were abandoned. Now they had a chance to show they were not helpless, to fight back even if fighting meant dying. She could not take that from them. All right, she said quietly. All right. We stand together. The Krell fleet advanced in perfect formation. 3 waves. First the light ships to test defenses, then the heavy cruisers to break them. Finally, the capital ships to finish what was left. It was a good plan. A standard plan. The kind of plan that always worked. Sarah smiled grimly. She hated standard plans. Helm, plot a course through the debris field from yesterday's battle. Fast and erratic. Make them chase us. Tactical. As soon as we get close to those wrecked ships, I want magnetic grapples on the biggest pieces. We are going to throw them at the enemy. Hayes looked at her in surprise. Commander, that is crazy. Yes, do it anyway. The Retribution accelerated into the debris field, old engines screaming. The Krell lightships followed, spreading out to surround her. But Sarah flew the cruiser like a fighter, dodging and weaving through the wreckage. Then as the Krell ships got close, the Retribution grabbed a piece of destroyed hull the size of a building and magnetically launched it like a missile. The improvised weapon hit a Krell frigate dead center. Both ships exploded. Again, Sarah ordered. Keep throwing things at them. The Retribution became a whirlwind of destruction, using the debris as weapons. It was not elegant. It was not by the book. But it worked. 3 more Krell ships died to flying wreckage before they figured out what was happening and pulled back. But the second wave was coming. Heavy cruisers, too big to be hurt by debris, too well armored to be scared. Sarah switched tactics. All power to the railguns. I want every shot to count. Hayes, fire on my mark. Wait until they are close. Make them think we are dead in the water. The Retribution went silent, drifting through space like a corpse. The Krell heavy cruisers approached confidently. This close, their weapons could not miss. Now, Sarah whispered, the Retribution's railguns fired at point-blank range. 4 shots, 4 different targets. All direct hits. 2 Krell cruisers simply exploded. The other 2 were crippled, leaking atmosphere and spinning out of control, but the effort cost them. Alarms screamed, systems overloaded. Weapons down, Hayes reported. Capacitors are fried. We need 20 minutes to recharge. We do not have 20 minutes, Sarah said. The third wave was already moving in. 5 Krell capital ships, each one bigger than the Retribution. Each one fresh and undamaged. This was it. The end. Then something impossible happened. The Zanari civilian ships moved forward. Hundreds of them, forming a wall between the Retribution and the Krell capital ships. What are they doing? Hayes asked in horror. Sarah realized the answer the same moment as the first explosion. The Zanari ships were ramming the Krell vessels. Not all of them. Just enough. Just the ships whose crews had volunteered. They accelerated to maximum speed and crashed into the enemy capital ships, their reactors set to overload on impact. It was a suicide run, and it was working. 2 Krell capital ships went dark, their hulls breached, their systems destroyed. A third was crippled. The remaining 2 pulled back, their commanders suddenly uncertain. On the planet below, Marcus Chen saw what was happening and made a decision. He pulled himself to the transmitter one last time. All Zanari fighters on the ground. All resistance cells. Hit them now. Every target. Every Krell soldier and vehicle. Show them what we are fighting for. The planet erupted in coordinated attacks. The Krell ground forces, already stretched thin, found themselves under assault from every direction. They could not provide support to the orbital fleet. They could barely defend themselves. The Krell fleet was in chaos. Their admiral screamed orders, but nobody was listening anymore. Some ships were trying to fight. Others were trying to retreat. All coordination was lost. Sarah saw the opening. Chief, I need weapons. Just one more shot. Can you give me that? Commander, if I reroute all remaining power, we might get 1 railgun online. But it will burn out the reactor. We will have no power at all afterward. Do it, Sarah ordered. Hayes, target the lead capital ship. Center mass. We only get 1 shot. The Retribution's last functional railgun charged slowly, drawing power from every system on the ship. The lights dimmed. Life support went to minimal. Everything fed into the weapon. Target locked, Hayes reported. Firing! The railgun spoke one final time. The projectile crossed the distance in seconds. 3 days after the battle, the human rescue fleet finally arrived at Kelmar 7. They came expecting to find ruins and refugees. Instead, they found something else entirely. The Retribution hung in orbit, surrounded by Zanari repair ships working around the clock to fix her. The old warship looked terrible, scarred and blackened and held together with temporary patches. But she was alive. Her crew was alive, and the planet below was free. Admiral Wei of the Earth Defense Fleet stood on the bridge of his flagship and stared at the tactical reports in disbelief. 1 ship, he said quietly. 1 heavy cruiser with a skeleton crew. Against 2 full Krell battle fleets, and they won. Not just 1 ship, sir, his intelligence officer said. The Zanari civilian population fought alongside them. And according to the reports, a human civilian named Marcus Chen provided tactical support from the ground, while severely wounded. Wei shook his head in wonder, then his expression hardened. Send a message to Commander Okonkwo. She is to report aboard my flagship immediately. She disobeyed direct orders. She took a ship that was bound for decommissioning into combat without authorization. There will be consequences. On the Retribution, Sarah Okonkwo received the summons and smiled sadly. She had known this was coming. The military did not forgive people who broke the rules, even when breaking the rules saved thousands of lives. Lieutenant Hayes, you have the bridge, she said. Try to keep the ship from falling apart while I am gone. Hayes looked worried. Commander, what do you think they will do? Court-martial, probably. Dishonorable discharge. Maybe brig time. Sarah shrugged. It was worth it. She took a shuttle to the flagship, prepared for whatever judgment awaited her. But as she walked through the corridors toward the Admiral's office, something strange happened. Every crew member she passed stood at attention. Some saluted. Others simply nodded with respect. Word had spread fast about what the Retribution had done, about the stand they made. Admiral Wei was waiting in his office, his face unreadable. Commander Okonkwo, sit. Sarah sat. Do you understand the severity of your actions? Wei asked. You disobeyed direct orders. You commandeered a ship that was not yours to command. You engaged in unauthorized combat. You risked your crew without proper authorization. The regulations are very clear about this. Yes, sir, Sarah said. I understand. I accept responsibility for my decisions. Wei stared at her for a long moment. Then he leaned back in his chair. The Zanari government has sent me 17 formal requests in the last 2 days. They want you as their permanent system defender. They want the Retribution to stay in orbit over their world. They are offering to pay for all repairs and upgrades. They have even offered to fund a full crew complement. Sarah blinked in surprise. Sir, The Human Merchant Guild has also contacted me, Wei continued. Apparently you saved 43 human civilian vessels that were docked at Kelmar 7 during the invasion. They are demanding that I give you a medal. Several medals, actually. There is a list. Sir, and then there is this. Wei slid a datapad across the desk. A formal petition from your crew. All 47 of them. They are requesting to remain under your command. They say, and I quote, Commander Okonkwo is the finest officer we have ever served under, and we will follow her wherever she leads. End quote. Sarah picked up the pad, her hands trembling slightly. She recognized every signature. Wei leaned forward. Commander, I should court-martial you. By every regulation we have, you deserve to lose your commission. But I have a problem. If I do that, the Zanari will likely refuse to work with the human fleet. The Merchant Guild will cause political problems, and I will lose one of the most effective combat commanders I have ever seen. He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. The Retribution was supposed to be scrapped. But she is not just metal and machinery, is she? She is a symbol of what we can be when we choose to do the right thing instead of the convenient thing. He turned back to Sarah. So here is what I am going to do. Officially, you never disobeyed orders. Your ship experienced a critical failure that prevented you from reaching the decommissioning facility. While conducting repairs, you received a distress call from Kelmar 7 and responded as required by maritime law. Everything you did was within regulations. Do you understand? Sarah understood perfectly. Wei was lying to protect her. And more than that, he was telling her she had done the right thing. Yes, sir, she said. I understand. Good, you are hereby promoted to captain. The Retribution will be your permanent command. You will accept the Zanari government's offer and serve as system defender for Kelmar 7. Consider it punishment for your navigational error. You will be stationed at the edge of human space, far from home, protecting insects. Dismissed. Sarah saluted, trying not to smile. Thank you, sir. She returned to the Retribution to find her crew celebrating. They had heard the news already. Somehow word always traveled fast on ships. Captain on deck. Hayes called out and the crew came to attention. Sarah looked at them. 47 people who had followed her into impossible odds, who had trusted her judgment even when it seemed insane. Stand easy, she said. I understand we have a lot of work to do. The Zanari are offering to repair the ship, but I want our people involved in every step. This is our ship. We will know every system, every wire, every bolt. Yes, Captain, the crew responded enthusiastically. On the planet's surface, Vesikala stood at the edge of a newly cleared plaza and watched the workers set the monument's foundation. The Zanari people had insisted on building it immediately. They wanted to remember, needed to remember. Marcus Chen sat nearby in a floating medical chair, his legs still wrapped in regeneration casts. The Zanari doctors had worked miracles, but it would be months before he could walk again. He did not seem to mind. What will the monument look like? He asked. Vesikala handed him the design plans. 2 hands clasped together, 1 human, 1 Zanari, carved from a single piece of stone. Beneath it, an inscription in both our languages. Marcus read the proposed inscription and smiled. They thought no help was coming. But one ship answered. One crew defied the impossible. Humanity did not forget its friends. He looked up at Vesikala. It is good. But you should add something. About the Zanari who fought too. The civilians who sacrificed themselves. We will have another monument for them, Vesikala said quietly. This one is for you, for the humans who came when nobody else would. She sat beside him, looking up at the sky where the Retribution was visible as a bright point of light. Marcus, why did they come? Why risk everything for people they barely know? Marcus was quiet for a moment, thinking. Because that is what good people do, he said finally. They show up. When it is hard. When it is dangerous. when it would be easier to look away. Good people show up anyway, and humans, for all our faults, we try to be good people. 6 months later, the Retribution sat in high orbit over Kelmar 7, fully repaired and upgraded. The Zanari engineers had done more than fix the damage. They had improved everything, adding new systems, better weapons, stronger shields. The old warship was more dangerous now than she had been in her prime. Captain Sarah Okonkwo stood on her bridge and reviewed the crew roster. She had a full complement now. 200 crew members, all volunteers. They had come from across human space when word spread about the Retribution stand. They wanted to serve on the ship that had taught the Krell what human determination looked like. "Captain, we are receiving a priority transmission from Earth," Lieutenant Hayes said. "It is from Human Defense Command." Sarah's chest tightened. What now? Had they changed their minds? Were they recalling her after all? The message played. It was short and official. The Retribution and her crew were being awarded the Star of Terra, the highest military honor humanity could give, for exceptional valor in defense of Allied civilians, for actions above and beyond the call of duty. The crew cheered. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. But the best moment came later that day, when a small Zanari shuttle docked with the Retribution. Marcus Chen emerged, walking on his own feet for the first time since the crash. He moved slowly, carefully, but he was walking. "Captain Okonkwo," he said formally, "I bring a message from the Zanari Council of Elders." "Of course, Merchant Chen, what message?" Marcus smiled. "They want to make you an honorary Zanari, an elder of the people. They say you have earned a place in our history, in our hearts." Sarah felt her eyes sting with unexpected tears. "I am honored, truly. There is more," Marcus said. "The children of Kelmar 7 have been studying human culture. They are learning your language, your history. They want to understand the people who saved them. And Elder Vesikala says that 50 years from now, when these children lead the Zanari people, they will remember. They will remember that humans came when nobody else would, that humans stood and fought when it would have been easier to walk away. She says that kind of friendship lasts forever." Sarah looked out at the planet below, green and blue and alive. She thought about the battles fought, the sacrifices made, the lives lost and lives saved. And she thought about what it meant to be human, to be the species that showed up. That answered the call, that refused to abandon friends. "Forever is a long time," she said. "Then we better make it count," Marcus replied.